Hello you rates, welcome to the third video of developing BrickBreaker in Scratch. Now hopefully what you've already created is your background, your ball and your paddle sprites. In today's lesson we are going to look at two different ways we can make the paddle move. Now the first way is by following the mouse cursor. So you could program your game so that wherever your paddle goes will be based on wherever the mouse is. This will allow for the user to move quite quickly from left to right on the screen. Now another option you have is to use the left and right keys. So this would of course make your game a little bit harder because it wouldn't allow the user to get from left to right so quickly. So currently I'm pressing left, pressing right, and the paddle is following those instructions. So those are your two options for making the paddle move. Before we look at actually how we start developing this script, let's explore a little bit about the Scratch interface. Now Scratch uses the X and Y axes. Now of course, X goes across here to here, and Y goes onto. Now the values we use are really important because furthest to the left would be minus 180. So if X is minus 180, your object will be somewhere over here. And on the right hand side it would be positive. Somewhere in the middle would be 0 for X, and of course in the total middle of the screen would also be 0 for Y. Now if we were making an object go up and down, if you wanted the object to appear in the very center, right at the top, you would have to have a positive value for Y. So let's say Y was, we'll say 180 as well. Okay, and of course down below Y would be minus 180. So whenever our object goes from left to right, okay, so if our object starts in the middle and we want the object to go further to the left, we need to minus from the x-axis because that is going to make the object go further to the left. Further to the right, the x-axis needs to go up, so we would be adding to x. Every time you press right, the x-axis needs to go up by a certain amount. Now that certain amount can be determined by you. So the two options we have is firstly, and this is the simpler option in terms of programming, is making the paddle follow the mouse cursor. Now what that would look like is something like this. We would have a forever. Forever means a loop essentially, so it will always happen. Now this would be set on the paddle object, so this would be for the paddle, and it would be forever set X to mouse X. So wherever the mouse is, if the mouse is here, then the paddle's here. If the mouse is here, then the paddle goes here, and it will continuously follow the cursor, along the x-axis. That is one option. Another option would be to program the paddle so that, let's just get that back up here, it follows your left and right click. So forever we would have that option there, and then we would have if left, so if left pressed, if left is pressed, then we want to set X minus 10. Okay, well actually it wouldn't be set, it would be change, so it would be change. So change X by minus 10. And then the opposite would be, of course, let's clear this up a little bit, let's clear the screen. If right pressed, if right pressed means we want to go to this side, which means we plus the x, then it would be change x by 10, and then that would be a positive number, of course. So change x by 10. So let's move over to Scratch and start developing these instructions. Just clear the screen. You're going to click outside here. So what I've done, I've gone to preview mode. I'm going to right click, delete block, delete 11 blocks. Yep. Okay. So the first technique I'm going to show you is how we would use the mouse cursor. I'm just going to move this out of the way. We will no longer be using the pen. Fantastic. So remember in the first or second video we looked at this section, and we looked at what the characteristics are of the current sprite we have selected. So currently this object is in x 46 and y minus 56, and if we drag the object and move it higher up, let's say over here, what do you think the coordinates will be? X is now minus 190 and y is 194. So you can test to see the boundaries of your game. At the highest point, y is 194, furthest to the left, almost off the screen, y is 228. Make sure you let go. And if I was to drag this all the way here, the furthest we can go to the left is minus 207. So the very first thing we want to do is, let's say by accident the user has dragged your objects to the top left. We need to make sure that when the game starts, all of our objects go to the correct location. Now the best way to do that is like this. You move your object to where you would like it to go, so just above the barrier, and currently its position is x minus 17 and y minus 63. So we go over to our code blocks, and the first block we need is an event. Now this event is really important when the green flag is clicked. This is, let me zoom in for you, this determines when the game starts essentially. So whenever the user presses the green flag, this will happen. Now we want our object to first of all go to the correct position. Now if you have your sprite in the correct position, you won't need to change that, but you can always change the instructions. So let's say we want our object to go somewhere else, x0 and y minus, so let's make it a drastic change. Let's make it a positive number, 56. We'll just say 57. So if I press the green flag here, it goes up there. I move it to this side, press the green flag, it resets. Well, of course we want our object to appear somewhere here, which would be minus 15 and minus 65. So I'll just put minus 65, and x we can keep as 0, which would be the center. Now the next instruction would be to make the paddle follow the mouse along the x-axis. Remember, the x-axis is what goes across. So now, because this always needs to happen, it doesn't just happen once, we need to use a loop. Now the loops are in the control section, and we are going to use a forever script. Now we want to forever, go to motions, and we scroll down, and we are going to set x to, and if we go to sensing, mouse x. So mouse x is a variable that will have the value for whatever coordinate the mouse is at. So if the mouse is at coordinate x minus 35, that is where the paddle goes. So we can test out our game. And as you see, as soon as I press play, so we stop that, press play again. Now you may be able to see one issue we have. Okay, so let's say we've just moved that, let's say just here, press play. It doesn't actually go to the correct position. Now this is because these instructions are happening very, very, very quickly. And what I would recommend doing is dragging and putting a wait script in between, so that it doesn't just go to the start position and then automatically to the position of your mouse. Now you can change these values. You can put 0.1 second, so it's a little bit quicker. All right, and if that doesn't work for you, you can have 1. It's totally up to you, but 1 is probably a nice amount of time. Press stop, press play, it goes to the middle, and then it moves to where you want it to go. So these are the instructions I'd say for developing a paddle that follows the mouse along the x-axis. If you would like to develop a different technique, please follow these instructions. Now I'm just going to separate these and put them further down just in case I need to refer back to them later. So if you would like your paddle to follow the left and right arrows, this is what you need to do. Now it starts off exactly the same. In events, when clicked, control, forever. It needs to always happen. It doesn't just happen once. This is a continuous loop that always gets executed. Now we need to use an if. Now an if will determine, it asks a question essentially. It says if something happens, if the user interacts with the program like this, the program should respond by doing this. So forever, and then we need to get a sensing, should be in sensing. Now initially it will say if space pressed, but we can of course change that. Now we don't want it to be space, we want it to be, let's do left first of all. So if the user presses the left arrow, what should the paddle do? How should the paddle change? How should it respond? You go to motions, and then you should be able to find somewhere along the bottom, change X by 10. Now if we change X by 10, let's see what happens. So I'm actually pressing left. I'm pressing left, but it's going up. I don't want that to happen. It should be going towards the left. What would we need to change here? Okay, hopefully you've guessed it. If not, we just need to minus. Okay, so when the left arrow is pressed, we need to minus. Now I'm pressing left, and this is changing the x-axis by 10. Now we can of course change these values, so we could say minus 5, and then it will only move a set number of steps each time. Now what you need to do is figure out how do we program the right arrow section. Now we could of course create a new block similar to this, but this time use right arrow. But you could also just add another if statement inside that loop. So if you go to controls, I will show you how to do this. If, see if you can figure out the rest of this video, so that if the right arrow is pressed, instead of changing X by minus 5, X will go up in a positive number. Remember to save your work. I'm not going to show you this because I want you to challenge and push yourself. If you have any questions, please just ask your teacher and they will be able to get back to you very quickly. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed the video. In the next tutorial, we will look at controlling the ball and controlling the way the ball moves around the screen and detecting if it hits the paddle, it should reflect.